The evening sky spread wide across the land, painted with shades of violet and gold. On the edge of the village, a tall stone tower stood, half broken from age and storms. At the top of that tower sat a young alien girl named Myra. Her legs dangled over the edge, and her eyes stayed fixed on the stars that appeared one by one in the growing night. Myra was not like the others in her village. The rest of the children played near the streams or chased glowing insects in the grass. They laughed, shouted, and forgot their worries with ease. But Myra always climbed the tower when the sun sank. She did not play like the others. She waited. Long ago, when she was only a small child, her parents had left. They had gone with the humans who came in shining ships, promising that they would return. Her mother had placed a small pendant in her hand before leaving and whispered, "Wait for us. No matter how long it takes, we will come back." Myra had held those words close to her heart. She carried them like a fire inside her, something that warmed her when nights grew cold. But many years had passed. Her parents never returned. The villagers told her to forget. They said the humans could not be trusted, that the ones who came were reckless and would never care for someone like her. "Your parents are gone," they said gently but firmly. "They chose the stars. You must choose the ground." Yet Myra could not believe that. Every evening she climbed the tower to watch the sky. She told herself that one day, a ship would come through the clouds, and inside it her parents would smile at her again. Hope was all she had, and she refused to let it go. The tower had become her second home. Its walls were rough, with cracks filled by moss and tiny flowers. Birds often rested in its windows, and the wind whistled through broken stones. Myra knew every step of the climb, every stone that wobbled under her foot. She would sit at the top with her pendant in her hand and watch the stars until sleep pulled at her eyes. Her village thought her strange, but some still cared for her. The elder woman, Rena, would sometimes bring her food and call up to her, "Child, you must eat. The stars will not feed you." Myra would smile faintly and climb down, but she always returned the next evening. One night, as she sat on the tower, a storm rolled over the land. Clouds covered the stars, and heavy rain began to fall. The wind howled so loudly that it seemed the tower itself might fall. Most would have hidden inside, but Myra stayed. She held the pendant close, whispering to herself, "If I wait long enough, they will come." Her heart carried two feelings that battled each day. One was hope, strong and bright. The other was doubt, quiet but sharp. Sometimes she wondered if her parents had forgotten her. Sometimes she feared they had never truly meant to return. But she never let the doubt win. If she stopped waiting, then the last piece of them would be gone. As the storm cleared, the sky revealed its endless canvas of stars. Myra wiped the rain from her face and stared upward. She tried to imagine where her parents might be. Were they trapped on some faraway world? Were they still searching for a way home? Or were they watching the same stars from another place, wishing they could reach her? The night stretched on. The world was silent except for the hum of insects and the gentle rustle of leaves. Myra closed her eyes for a moment, but then a sound pulled her back. A low rumble echoed in the distance. It was not thunder, for the storm had passed. It was deeper, stranger, like the growl of a giant beast moving across the sky. Her eyes widened. She leaned forward, clutching the edge of the stone. The sound grew louder. The sky shimmered with a flash of light, and then, breaking through the clouds, something appeared. It was not like the glowing insects or the falling stars she sometimes saw. It was larger, brighter, and it moved with purpose. Her heart pounded. For years she had dreamed of this moment. Was it her parents returning at last? Was this the ship she had prayed for each night? She stood quickly, her hands shaking, her breath caught in her throat. The object roared as it descended, trailing smoke and fire. It did not move smoothly like the ships in her memory. It spun, shuddering as if broken. It fell toward the forest beyond the hills, vanishing in a crash that shook the ground. Myra's eyes stayed wide with shock. This was no dream. A ship had come from the stars, and it had landed near her village. She gripped her pendant tightly. Her heart told her that this was a sign. After all these years of waiting, something had finally changed. She did not know who was inside the broken ship, or whether it would bring joy or sorrow, but she knew one thing with certainty. Her waiting was over. The night was restless in the village. Many had felt the ground shake when the object fell from the sky. Whispers moved quickly through the narrow paths between homes. Some thought it was a meteor, others feared it was a weapon from the stars. No one dared to go near the forest where the crash had happened. No one, except Myra. Her heart still beat fast as she climbed down the old tower. She pressed the pendant in her hand and looked toward the dark outline of the hills. Smoke rose faintly against the moonlight, curling into the sky like a signal. She knew she had to see what had fallen. If it truly was a ship, she could not wait for others to decide. The villagers tried to stop her. As she moved toward the forest path, Elder Rena called out, "Child, do not go. Whatever came from the sky brings danger." Others nodded and muttered about humans, about fire and destruction. Myra paused, but only for a moment. She had waited years for this sign. She could not turn back now. The forest was thick and quiet. The leaves still dripped with rain from the storm, and the air smelled of smoke and damp earth. Myra pushed through tall ferns, her feet quick and sure. She had walked these paths many times, but tonight they felt different, alive with unseen energy. Every sound, the crack of a branch, the rustle of wings, made her heart leap. Soon, the glow of fire appeared between the trees. She stepped carefully closer until the clearing opened before her. There, resting awkwardly in broken earth, lay a strange vessel. Its metal skin was scorched, and sparks jumped from its sides. The ship groaned like a wounded animal, its nose buried deep into the soil. Myra stood frozen, her breath caught in her chest. This was no dream. It was real. A ship from the stars. She took a step forward, and then another, her eyes wide with wonder. The air smelled of burning metal. She could hear the hiss of cooling parts and the faint crackle of fire. The ship was unlike the ones she remembered from her childhood, but something about it felt familiar. Then she saw movement. A figure stumbled out of the broken hatch, falling to one knee. It was tall, with 2 arms and 2 legs, wrapped in a torn suit. The face was partly covered by a cracked helmet, but through the glass she saw human eyes. Myra's heart leapt. A human. The figure tried to stand but swayed, holding his side. He looked around, dazed, as if he did not yet see her. Myra wanted to rush forward, but fear held her still. She had heard so many stories about humans. Some called them brave, others called them reckless, but always they were dangerous. The man collapsed to the ground. His hand reached weakly for something in the dirt. Myra's feet moved before she could think. She ran to his side and knelt beside him. His suit was torn, and blood stained the fabric. His breathing was heavy, uneven. He turned his head and finally noticed her. His eyes widened in surprise. You're not human," he whispered, his voice weak. Myra shook her head but kept her eyes steady on him. "You came from the stars," she said softly. "Who are you?" The man gave a faint smile, though his face showed pain. "Daniel," he answered. His hand trembled as he tried to lift it, but Myra gently pressed it back down. "You are hurt," she said firmly. "Do not move." For a long moment, they stayed there in silence, the sounds of the broken ship filling the air around them. Myra studied him closely. This was the first human she had seen since her parents left. He looked tired, fragile even, yet something about him felt strong. He had come from the same stars her parents had followed. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them again. "Are you alone out here?" he asked. Myra hesitated. She wanted to tell him everything, that she had waited years, that she still believed her parents would return. But she only said, "I live in the village. It is near." Daniel coughed, then gave a weak laugh. "Good. Because I think I will need help." Myra looked back at the smoking ship, then at him. She knew the villagers would not welcome a human. They feared the stars. Yet she also knew she could not leave him here. He was the first sign she had been waiting for, and fate had brought him to her. She placed her small hands under his arm. "I will help you," she said firmly. "Come with me." With effort, Daniel leaned against her, though his weight was heavy. Step by step, she guided him away from the wreckage, back toward the forest path. The pendant at her neck glimmered in the moonlight, as if her parents were watching. Behind them, the broken ship hissed and smoked. Ahead of them, the village waited, though Myra did not know what welcome they would give. But in her heart, she felt something new, something stronger than doubt. Hope was no longer just a dream of the stars. Hope had a face now. A human face. The path back to the village was long and uneven. Myra moved slowly, helping Daniel walk step by step. His weight pressed against her shoulder, and she could hear his heavy breathing with every move. The night was filled with the sounds of insects and rustling leaves, but Myra's mind was far away. She kept thinking about the strange twist of fate that had brought this human to her. When they reached the edge of the village, lights flickered inside small homes. A few villagers were awake, whispering about the crash. As soon as they saw Myra supporting the human, voices rose with alarm. "Stay back," shouted one man. "Do not bring him here," cried another woman. The villagers gathered, forming a nervous circle. Their eyes were full of fear and anger. Elder Rena stepped forward, her old face set with worry. "Myra," she said firmly, "you cannot bring a human into this place. We do not know his purpose. We do not know his danger." Myra held Daniel tighter, refusing to let go. "He is hurt," she said. "He needs help. He cannot harm anyone like this." Daniel lifted his head weakly, his voice rough but calm. "I do not want trouble. I only want to survive." The villagers muttered among themselves. They remembered the past, the time when Myra's parents left with humans and never returned. To them, humans were a symbol of loss. But Myra stood tall, her pendant shining in the firelight. She would not let them turn Daniel away. At last, Elder Rena sighed. "Very well," she said. "You may keep him in the old storehouse. But hear me, child, this is your responsibility. If danger follows, it will fall on you." Myra nodded quickly. "I understand." With effort, she guided Daniel to the empty storehouse at the edge of the village. Inside, the air smelled of dry straw and old wood. She helped him lie down on a pile of cloth. His face was pale, his suit torn, but his eyes held a faint spark of gratitude. "You should not have done this for me," he whispered. "Your people are afraid. You may suffer because of me." Myra shook her head. "I have waited years for someone to come from the stars. Now you are here. I cannot leave you." Daniel studied her face for a moment. "Waited?" he asked. "Why were you waiting?" Her fingers touched the small pendant at her neck. For a long moment, she said nothing, then her voice came softly. "My parents left with the humans many years ago. They said they would return, but they never did. I climbed the tower every night and watched the stars. I thought, maybe one day I would see them again." Daniel's expression grew heavy. He understood the weight of her words. He had seen many journeys, many missions lost to the endless sky. The truth of her parents' fate was uncertain, but he could not crush the hope in her eyes. Instead, he reached out a hand, weak but steady. "I do not know where your parents are," he said slowly. "But I can promise you this. I will help you find the truth. You should not wait alone any longer." Myra's eyes widened. No one had ever spoken such words to her before. The villagers told her to forget. Even Elder Rena told her to accept loss. But this human, broken and wounded, had given her something new, an oath. "You promise?" she asked, her voice trembling. Daniel gave a small nod. "Yes. I promise." Silence filled the storehouse. Outside, the village slept, but inside, something changed. Myra no longer felt like a lonely watcher of the stars. She felt as if a door had opened, one that led beyond the hills, beyond the clouds, beyond waiting. The next days passed slowly. Myra brought Daniel food and water. She cleaned his wounds and repaired parts of his torn suit. The villagers stayed away, though some came near to watch from a distance. Fear remained, but curiosity grew stronger each day. At night, when the village was quiet, Myra sat beside Daniel and asked questions about his world. He told her of Earth, of oceans that stretched farther than sight, of mountains that touched the clouds, of cities filled with lights brighter than the stars. Myra listened with wide eyes, imagining every word. "Do humans always travel so far?" she asked one evening. Daniel smiled faintly. "Yes. We always search for more. Sometimes it brings us wonder, sometimes it brings us loss. But we keep going." Myra looked down at her pendant, her thoughts heavy. "My parents went with humans because they hoped for more too. But they never came back. Maybe the stars are too big." Daniel turned his head toward her. "The stars are big, yes. But they are not endless. If your parents left records, if they left signs, then I can find them. I know how to search." Myra's heart stirred. For years, she had only waited, but now she felt the possibility of action. Perhaps she did not need to remain on the tower forever. Perhaps she could follow the path her parents once took. She looked at Daniel, his face tired but steady. In that moment, she believed his promise. She believed that with a human beside her, the stars no longer felt unreachable. The lonely watcher was no longer waiting alone. Days turned into a quiet routine. Myra cared for Daniel in the old storehouse, bringing food and water, while Daniel slowly regained his strength. His wounds healed, though his suit still bore scars from the crash. Each night, when the village was calm, the two of them talked about the stars. Myra asked questions endlessly, and Daniel answered with patience, painting pictures of distant worlds and great journeys. But Daniel knew something important was missing. He had promised Myra that he would help her find the truth about her parents, yet he had no clue where to start. The crash had left most of his tools broken, and his ship was in pieces. Still, he could not give up. One morning, Myra entered the storehouse carrying a small basket of fruit. Daniel was sitting on the floor, his hands busy with a damaged tablet from his ship. Sparks had burned its edges, but the screen still glowed faintly. Myra tilted her head curiously. "What are you doing?" she asked. Daniel looked up, his eyes tired but focused. "I am trying to recover the data from my ship. If your parents left any records in human systems, maybe I can find them." Myra's heart skipped. "You can do that." "Not easily," Daniel admitted. "But sometimes broken machines still hold secrets." For hours, Myra sat beside him, watching as his fingers worked across the cracked screen. Strange symbols and lines filled the display, none of which she understood. Daniel explained patiently, telling her it was coded information, pieces of memory stored inside. By nightfall, the tablet finally responded. A faint map appeared on the screen, filled with dots of light. Daniel leaned closer, adjusting the settings. He frowned. This is not just my data. It's older. It must have been stored here before I got this tablet. Myra's eyes widened. Older? From when? Daniel tapped a sequence, and the screen changed. A series of logs appeared, their text simple but filled with detail. Myra leaned close, and her heart raced as she read the names written there. Among them were her parents. She gasped, her hands trembling. This is them. Daniel's expression grew serious. These are records from a human outpost. It seems your parents worked with them. They left with a mission. Myra's breath caught in her throat. She had imagined this moment for years, but now that it was real, she could barely find her voice. Where did they go? Daniel scrolled carefully through the log. His brow furrowed. The mission was dangerous. They wanted to reach another station, far from here. But the last entry, it ends suddenly. The trail stops. Myra's heart sank. She had hoped to find words saying her parents were safe, that they would return soon. Instead, all she found was silence. She looked away, her pendant clutched tightly in her hand. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The storehouse felt heavy with the weight of the past. Then Daniel touched her shoulder gently. Do not lose hope. Look here. He pointed at the screen again. Before the last entry, there is a set of coordinates. The location of the human vessel they traveled with. It is far, but it is something. If we follow it, we may learn what happened. Myra blinked, her eyes brightening with a fragile light. You mean, we can go? Yes, Daniel said firmly. Not right now. My ship is broken. But if I can repair it, we can follow this trail. Your waiting can end. You can seek the truth yourself. The thought filled Myra with both fear and excitement. She had lived her whole life in the village, climbing the tower, watching the sky. The idea of leaving, of flying into the stars, was something she had only dreamed about. Yet now, with Daniel's steady voice beside her, it seemed possible. That night, Myra could not sleep. She climbed the tower again, as she always had, but this time the stars felt closer. She no longer looked at them with empty hope. She looked at them with purpose. Somewhere among them lay the answers she had been waiting for. The next morning, Daniel began to inspect the remains of his ship. Myra followed him to the crash site, her heart beating fast with both fear and wonder. The ship still smoked in places, its body broken and scorched. To Myra, it looked beyond repair, but Daniel knelt beside the wreckage with calm determination. This will take time, he said, running his hands over the damaged panels. But humans build things to last. If I can recover the engine and the navigation system, we will have a chance. Myra stepped closer, her voice steady. I will help. Daniel gave her a small smile. You remind me of the explorers I once knew. Brave, even when afraid. Together they worked. Myra carried tools, cleared debris, and listened carefully as Daniel explained what each part meant. She learned about engines, wires, and circuits, words she had never known before. Her hands grew dirty, but she did not care. Every piece they lifted, every bolt they turned, felt like a step closer to her parents. As the sun set, Myra sat on the grass, gazing at the sky once more. Daniel joined her, his face tired but calm. Do you still believe they are out there? He asked softly. Myra touched her pendant. I do not know. But I believe I must find out. Daniel nodded. Then we will find out together. The forest grew quiet, and the stars slowly filled the sky. For the first time in years, Myra's waiting did not feel endless. The secret logs had given her a path, and the human beside her had given her the strength to follow it. The lonely watcher of the stars was no longer just waiting. She was preparing. The days after discovering the old records were filled with new energy. Myra felt as if the air itself had changed. For years she had waited in silence, watching the stars without direction. Now she had a path. Somewhere out there, beyond the hills and the sky, the coordinates her parents had left were waiting. Daniel worked each day on his broken ship. The crash had left deep scars, and many pieces were useless. Yet Daniel was patient, and his hands were steady. He explained to Myra what each part was, how engines breathed, how wires carried life through the vessel. She listened closely, eager to learn, eager to help. The villagers, however, did not share her excitement. They stood at a distance, whispering as they watched Myra and the human working together. Some muttered that the ship would only bring danger. Others warned that the sky had already taken too much from her family. Elder Rena visited one evening, her voice heavy with concern. "Myra," she said softly, "you are young. The stars are not kind. They swallowed your parents. Must you follow the same road?" Myra looked down for a moment, then lifted her eyes with quiet strength. "I must know the truth. I cannot wait forever. If I stay here, I will always wonder." Elder Rena sighed. She saw the fire in Myra's heart and knew it would not be put out. "Then may the stars guide you," she said, placing a hand gently on Myra's shoulder before leaving. At last, after many days of work, Daniel stepped back from the ship. Its body still bore scars, but its engine hummed faintly with life. The wings were crooked, the panels dented, yet it could fly. Daniel wiped the sweat from his face and turned to Myra with a tired smile. "It will not be comfortable," he said. "But it will carry us to the stars." Myra's eyes shone with wonder. She touched the metal side of the vessel, feeling its warmth. This was the door she had been waiting for all her life. The night before they were to leave, Myra climbed the tower one last time. She looked down at the village, at the people she had known since birth. The homes glowed softly with firelight. She knew some of them worried for her, others disapproved, but this place had been her world. She whispered a farewell in her heart, then turned her eyes upward. The stars seemed to listen. The next morning, Daniel prepared the ship. Myra stood at the base of the ramp, holding her small pendant in her hand. Her heart beat quickly. She felt both fear and excitement battling inside her. The thought of leaving her world frightened her, but the promise of answers gave her courage. "Are you ready?" Daniel asked gently. Myra nodded. "Yes." She climbed the ramp, her steps firm despite the tremor in her hands. Inside, the ship smelled of metal and smoke, but it also felt alive, humming with quiet power. Daniel guided her to a seat beside him and secured the straps. The villagers had gathered at a distance. Some waved, some turned away. Elder Rena stood with her staff, watching silently. Myra met her eyes through the glass, and the old woman raised a hand in blessing. With a deep roar, the engines came alive. The ground trembled, and the ship lifted slowly into the air. Myra gripped her seat, her heart racing. The village grew smaller beneath them, the tower shrinking until it was no more than a shadow on the land. Then, with a burst of power, the ship rose through the clouds. The sky opened wide, and Myra saw the stars like she had never seen them before, bright, endless, and close enough to touch. Her breath caught, tears stinging her eyes. For the first time, she was not just watching. She was among them. Daniel glanced at her, noticing her wide eyes and trembling hands. "It can be frightening at first," he said. "But remember, you are not alone." Myra turned to him, her voice steady despite her tears. "I know. Thank you." The journey was not smooth. The ship shook as it left the atmosphere, and the alarms flashed red more than once. But Daniel's hands moved with calm skill, adjusting controls, guiding the vessel. Myra did her best to help, following his instructions, pressing buttons when told. Slowly, she began to understand how the ship listened to its pilot, how each sound and light told a story. When the ship finally steadied in the silence of space, Myra gasped. Outside the window stretched an ocean of stars, more than she had ever imagined. Planets shone like gems, and distant suns burned with colors she had never seen. Her heart raced, but it was not fear, it was wonder. She pressed her pendant to her chest. "Mother, father," she whispered softly, "I am coming." Daniel looked at her, his voice low but firm. "The road will not be easy. There will be dangers. But you are strong, Myra. Stronger than you know." Myra nodded, her eyes still fixed on the stars. "As long as we follow the path, I will not stop." The ship moved forward, leaving her world behind. The coordinates glowed faintly on the screen, guiding them like a thread of light through the darkness. The journey had begun. And Myra, who once only waited, now carried her hope into the stars. The silence of space was unlike anything Myra had ever known. On her world, the nights had always been filled with the whisper of leaves, the song of insects, and the wind through the old tower. Here, beyond the clouds, there was nothing, only the soft hum of the ship and the steady breath of Daniel beside her. For a while, Myra sat in awe, her eyes fixed on the endless sea of stars outside the window. Every light seemed to call to her, every shadow seemed to hide a mystery. But as the hours stretched on, the wonder slowly gave way to challenge. The ship trembled often, its systems strained by the damage from the crash. Warning lights blinked across the console, and Daniel's hands moved constantly, adjusting, repairing, guiding. Myra watched closely, trying to learn. "Why do the lights keep flashing?" she asked. Daniel gave a small smile, though his face was tired. "Because this ship has been through more than it should. But as long as the core engine holds, we will keep moving. Do not be afraid." She nodded firmly. "I am not afraid." Her words were brave, but her heart pounded each time the ship groaned. Still, she sat straight, watching the stars with determination. She would not turn back now. On the second day of their journey, danger appeared. Daniel noticed at first small signals on the screen, moving fast behind them. His expression grew serious. "Pirates," he said quietly. Myra's breath caught. "Pirates? Out here?" "Yes," Daniel replied, his eyes fixed on the screen. "Space is wide, but danger travels far. They see a broken ship and think it will be easy prey." The signals grew closer. Soon, Myra could see them through the window, three dark vessels, sleek and sharp, gliding through space like hunters. Her hands tightened around her pendant. "What do we do?" she asked. Daniel's voice was calm, but his movements were quick. "We run." The ship's engine roared as he pushed the controls forward. The stars blurred as they sped ahead, but the pirate ships followed, weaving through the darkness. Alarms rang, and Myra's heart raced. Daniel gave her a quick glance. "Myra, I need your help. Watch the left panel. When it shows a red light, press the button beneath it. That will send out flares to confuse them." Myra nodded, her hands ready. She had never done anything like this, but she trusted him. The chase grew fierce. Bright bursts of light streaked past the windows as the pirates fired. The ship shook, but Daniel steered with skill, dodging as best he could. A red light flashed on Myra's panel. Without hesitation, she pressed the button. A stream of glowing sparks shot out behind them, scattering in the pirates' path. "They are slowing," Daniel called. Myra's heart leapt with relief, but the pirates did not stop. They adjusted, circling closer. Another red light flashed, and Myra pressed again. More sparks flew, but one of the pirate ships dodged easily. "They are learning," Daniel muttered. The chase felt endless. Myra's hands shook, but her mind was sharp. She remembered the old star maps stored in Daniel's tablet, the ones she had studied with him during quiet nights in the storehouse. Quickly, she leaned toward him. "There is a nebula nearby. I saw it on the map. If we hide inside, they may lose us." Daniel's eyes flicked to her, then back to the controls. "A nebula is dangerous. The gases can damage the ship. But," he smiled faintly, "it may be our best chance." He changed course, guiding the ship toward a great cloud of glowing blue mist ahead. The pirates followed, firing wildly, but Myra pressed the buttons again and again, sending sparks to distract them. As they entered the nebula, the ship shook violently. Lights flickered, and the console buzzed with warnings. Myra gripped her seat, her teeth clenched. Outside, the mist swirled like a living ocean, hiding everything in its depths. For a tense few minutes, the pirates chased them into the cloud. But the deeper they went, the harder it became to see. The pirate ships spread apart, searching, their lights cutting through the mist. Daniel whispered, "Hold steady, Myra." He cut the ship's power, leaving them drifting silently in the glowing fog. They floated like a shadow among the stars, barely moving, barely breathing. Minutes passed like hours. Then, slowly, the pirate ships turned and faded away, their lights vanishing into the mist. Myra let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. Her hands trembled, but her eyes were bright. "We did it." Daniel gave a tired laugh. "We did. And it was your idea." Myra smiled faintly, pride warming her chest. For the first time, she felt she had done more than wait. She had acted, and it had saved them. The ship drifted quietly until Daniel restarted the engine. It coughed and groaned, but it came back to life. They moved slowly out of the nebula, back into the open sea of stars. As the danger faded behind them, Myra looked at Daniel. "Does this happen often, when humans travel the stars?" "More often than we wish," he said honestly. "But it is the price of seeking more. There is always risk." Myra touched her pendant gently. "Then I am ready for risk. If it leads to the truth, I will not turn back." Daniel studied her, his expression soft. "You are braver than you know, Myra. You remind me of the explorers who built the first paths among the stars." She looked out the window, her heart steady. The stars no longer felt so far, no longer felt so silent. She was not only waiting for answers, now she was fighting for them. And though the journey had only begun, Myra knew that with Daniel beside her, she could face whatever trials the stars held. The stars stretched endlessly before Myra as the ship moved steadily along the coordinates her parents had left. The nebula and the pirates were behind them, and for the first time since leaving the village, Myra felt a quiet focus settle in her heart. Each light on the screen marked a step closer to the answers she had longed for. Daniel worked at the controls, guiding the ship carefully through asteroid fields and narrow passages between distant moons. Myra studied the screen, memorizing every signal, every shape of the stars. "We are close," she whispered, more to herself than to him. Daniel glanced at her. "Close, yes. But there is no telling what we will find. It may be empty. It may be danger." Myra's hands tightened around her pendant. "I must see it. I have waited too long." After hours of travel, the ship approached a faint glow in the distance. Myra leaned forward, squinting. The glow was not like a star. It pulsed softly, like a beacon. As they drew nearer, the shape became clearer. A station, partially hidden by clouds of cosmic dust, floated in silence. Its metal walls were old, worn, but still intact. "That's it," Daniel said. "This must be the station your parents traveled to." Myra's heart pounded. For years, she had only waited and imagined. Now, she was about to step into the place her parents had reached. She felt fear, yes, but stronger than that was hope, burning brightly inside her chest. Daniel carefully guided the ship closer. The station was large, with docking ports and structures extending outward. Some parts were darkened, others glowed faintly from internal lights. Myra could see no movement, but she felt it in her heart, the presence of the past waiting for her. "Prepare to dock," Daniel said. "We need to be careful. The station may be damaged or unstable." Myra nodded. Together, they maneuvered the ship slowly, aligning it with one of the docking bays. The engines hummed as they approached. The ship shook slightly as it locked into place. The silence of space was complete, broken only by the faint hiss of the ship's systems. When the hatch opened, Myra stepped out first, her small feet touching the cold metal floor. The station smelled faintly of metal and dust. Light flickered from panels along the walls. She walked slowly, her eyes scanning every corner, every shadow. Daniel followed, carrying tools and supplies. He moved with caution, but Myra's eyes were fixed ahead. She felt the pull of the past, the presence of her parents even though she could not see them yet. In the central hall of the station, she found it a small room, filled with records, charts, and personal items. And in the corner, a recorder glowed softly. Myra ran to it and pressed a button. A familiar voice filled the room. It was her mother, warm and gentle. "Myra," the recording said, "if you are hearing this, then we did not return. We could not." Tears filled Myra's eyes. For so long, she had wondered if they had forgotten her. The sound of her mother's voice made the years of waiting suddenly real, yet comforting. Her father's voice followed. "We tried to come back, but the journey was longer than we expected. There were dangers we could not overcome. But know this, Myra, we always loved you. Always." Myra held her pendant tightly, letting the words fill her heart. She had waited, yes, but now she understood. Her parents' love had guided her, even across the stars. Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder. "They left signs for you. That is why we found this station. They wanted you to know the truth when you were ready." Myra nodded, taking a deep breath. The weight of waiting lifted slightly. She felt both sorrow and peace. Her parents were gone, but their love and courage had led her to this moment. Together, they explored the station, finding records of missions and travels, maps of worlds Myra had never imagined. Each discovery brought her closer to understanding the lives her parents had lived. She felt pride swell inside her. They had chosen a path of exploration, of courage, and she realized now that she shared that courage. "Daniel," she said softly, "I was afraid I would be lost without them. But now I see that waiting was only the first step. I am ready to move forward." Daniel smiled, his eyes warm. "The stars are full of paths. And now, you are no longer waiting, you are traveling. You will find what comes next." Myra stepped to the observation window, gazing out at the universe. The stars seemed to shine differently now, brighter and more alive. She realized that waiting had taught her patience, hope, and strength. But traveling taught her courage, and now she carried both. The station was no longer just a place of the past. It was a starting point. Myra knew there were worlds she had yet to see, challenges to face, and discoveries to make. She glanced at Daniel, and together they prepared to leave, leaving the station behind but carrying its lessons in their hearts. As the ship lifted off, Myra pressed her hand to her pendant one last time. "Thank you," she whispered. "For guiding me, for helping me find the truth." Daniel piloted the ship back into the stars. Myra watched the glowing points of light, knowing that no matter how far the journey took her, she was ready. She had waited, she had learned, and now she would explore, carrying the spirit of her parents and her own courage among the stars. And for the first time, Myra felt completely free.